Welcome to this explainer. Grab a seat, get comfortable, and imagine we're just sitting down by a warm fire. Today we're going to unpack a really fascinating mental model about human nature. It's a deep dive into how we judge talent, how we measure merit, and quite frankly, the professional masks we all wear every single day. We're exploring a contradiction that challenges our most basic gut-level instincts about what competence actually looks like.
To kick things off, I want you to picture this. Put yourself in the shoes of an incredibly anxious patient. You're lying in a hospital bed, staring up at the ceiling, and you're forced to choose between two equally ranked surgeons for a critical, life-saving operation. The catch? You only have a few moments to decide, and you have to base your choice entirely on first impressions.
On one hand, you have a surgeon who looks perfectly polished. They look like a doctor straight out of central casting, you know? Refined, flawlessly tailored coat, distinguished silver hair, and a calming, measured voice. Now, on the other hand, is a surgeon who looks, well, quite frankly, a bit rough. They're unkempt, maybe a little overweight, speaking bluntly, and honestly looking a lot more like a local butcher than a member of the medical elite. Your immediate instinct screams to pick the refined doctor, right? Of course it does.
But wait, because the famous thinker and author Nassim Nicholas Taleb drops an absolute bombshell here. He argues you should actually pick the butcher-like surgeon. Now, why on earth would you do that? Because if this completely unpolished individual is still practicing at the exact same elite level as the polished one, they possess undeniable, off-the-charts medical skills. They literally had to be so good at their job that they could overcome massive societal disadvantages just to keep their foot in the door.
This paradox exposes a fascinating quirk in how our brains are wired. Simply put, we take lazy cognitive shortcuts. We rely incredibly heavily on what's called the halo effect. It's this psychological trap where we mistakenly equate a highly polished exterior with deep-rooted elite capability. We just automatically assume that because someone looks professional, they must be exceptionally competent. But Taleb is warning us here. A convincing look is often a very weak and frankly misleading signal of actual ability.
So let's look at what we might call the gritty grinder path. This represents the ultimate underdog, because they completely lack those superficial advantages like undeniable charm, perfect grooming, or coming from the right background. They are forced to build immense resilience. They have to develop profound resourcefulness and an undeniable mastery of their craft just to survive in a fiercely competitive landscape.
And we see this exact dynamic clearly outside of the hospital too, especially in professional sports. Think about legendary athletes like Steph Curry or Tom Brady. Early on, they did not fit the physical molds at the scouting combine. They were undersized, or they just lacked the traditional elite athletic metrics compared to those pro-day perfection candidates who looked like literal Greek gods. Yet, it was their invisible grit, their adaptability, and their obsessive work ethic that completely revolutionized how their games are played.
Now, to be completely fair, how we judge an underdog today is a complex and highly unsettled landscape. If you look at extensive online debates like those on Hacker News regarding medical school admissions, there is a real objective tension here. Some folks firmly argue that unconventional success is a pure, untainted signal of raw, hard-won merit. Others argue that modern systemic interventions and diversity quotas alter the baseline for admissions, fundamentally shifting what it means to be an underdog. And still, others advocate for strict, unyielding objectivity, arguing that standardized testing and patient outcomes are all that should ever matter. We're not here to take a side in that debate, but it is absolutely vital to recognize just how complex the very definition of merit has become in modern institutions.
And the data shows that our biases remain deeply, deeply entrenched regardless. A fascinating 2019 study on surgeon perception revealed a jarring split. Female surgeons were frequently rated by patients as warmer, but significantly less competent than their male counterparts. This vividly highlights how heavily we still lean on traditional gender stereotypes and preconceived notions of what an expert is supposed to look like, rather than evaluating their pure, objective performance.
Plus, we have to acknowledge that having an unconventional appearance isn't always a personal choice. Sometimes, society just projects it onto you. Female doctors, for instance, face persistent, exhausting hurdles. They are often misidentified as nurses or support staff. Their attire is heavily scrutinized compared to men. It just proves that a polished exterior, for some people, is simply a reflection of social advantage and easily fitting into a neat little stereotype rather than a reflection of their raw surgical skill.
But
Here is where we hit a real friction point. While an unconventional appearance might powerfully signal hidden grit, research also shows that looking the part serves a highly functional purpose. That crisp, clean white coat in a hospital, it actually works. It builds immediate trust and makes patients comfortable enough to disclose highly sensitive medical information that could save their lives.
Which brings us to a really profound synthesis from Papa, the author who inspired this entire explainer. He calls it the impotence of competence. Here is the harsh, unavoidable reality. Raw skill is utterly powerless if no one trusts you enough to actually let you use it. You could be the greatest, most talented surgeon on the planet, but if your appearance terrifies the patient into running out of the hospital, your competence is entirely impotent. Papa points out that in the labyrinth of corporate promotions, and really just in daily life, the well-dressed, polished person often gets the job over the unkempt genius. Why? Because humans are fundamentally visual creatures. When we are stressed out, sick, or getting ready to invest millions of dollars, we are desperately looking for safe harbors of professionalism to lower our anxiety.
Think of it like selling fruit at a market. If you want people to buy your apples, they need to be shiny and polished in the display. You can't just toss them in a muddy bin and expect people to bite. That little extra effort to look your best all the time demonstrates a vital attention to detail. It communicates to the world, hey, if I cared this much about my own appearance and presentation, imagine how much care and attention to detail I'm going to bring to your surgery or your business or your project.
Drawing on some incredible generational wisdom from his father, Papa Q Bear, and his spouse, Colonel Debs, Papa reminds us of a hard truth. Leaders never get a playoff. You are always being observed. Always. Therefore, you must always look sharp for the team. You owe it to the people relying on you to look the part, so they can feel totally secure in your leadership.
So, to synthesize our journey today, here are your main takeaways. First, when you're choosing an expert, actively look for the hidden grit of the underdog. Don't just judge the book by its cover. But second, in your own life, look the part to get the part. Make sure your apples are shiny, but absolutely ensure you have the relentless, hard-earned competence to back up that presentation the second you step into the operating room.
I want to leave you with this final fireside thought to reflect on today. Take a real look in the mirror. What does your own mask of professionalism communicate to the people around you? Are you signaling a safe harbor through your attention to detail? And even more importantly, when the mask is inevitably stripped away and the real pressure hits, is there enough invisible grit underneath to survive?